Yes, it's good. It's good. We are here.
We are all here. We are all here. So yeah, 2:45, and then we'll go live. And I've got to do a bit of a long intro just to include the sponsors and everything else. And then what I'll do is I'm going to hand over to my lovely panelists, and then I'll just call out your name. And if you could just give a very brief, because this is a short panel, just a brief intro to who you are and how you're associated to the LGBT plus industry, travel industry. All good?
Oh, good.
All good.
Always have technical issues. Always, always, always.
Always, always.
Well, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed because I tend to freeze up at least once during every Zoom call, so.
Oh, really?
Where are you, Milan?
Pardon?
Where are you?
Crystal Palace, actually.
Oh, down the road from me.
Sunny Crystal Palace, eh?
It is very sunny today.
Park's lovely over there as well, isn't it? Who's joining us from? I know Pablo, you're joining us from Argentina. Anyone else? Is everyone else UK based at the moment, or anyone else international? Anyone else coming out from any other places? No. Can you all hear me? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Great. That's the main thing. This is like a countdown to New Year's Eve, isn't it? You know, that 5, 4, 3.
It's a bit hotter.
I know, it's hot inside, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I've closed my window so there's no children screaming outside as well.
Yeah, close them up, right? Bang them up with the thing. And also, Darren, just before we go, sorry, I apologies I didn't get a chance to reply to you yet, but thank you for your message, and I definitely will give you a reply afterwards. Just a bit crazy town at the moment. So I think we got 1 minute. Everyone good? So also the other thing I was just going to say is, as we know, just because it's a short panel, just try and keep them short and sharp and sweet with the answers. But I just want it to be relaxed, so it's all good. So I'm just going to buy my screen here for when it hits 2:45. Is everyone still on 2:44? Hey everyone, welcome to my WorkPride. I'm Saskia and I will be your host for today's LGBT plus travel panel. For those of you who didn't know, my Work is a business community for LGBT plus professionals and also inclusive organisations. So 2 of my favourite things. Today is being sponsored by the British Army, and also our headline sponsor is EY. And as I said, today is day 3. How exciting. So let's turn to our lovely panellists. And I just want to say welcome everyone. How are you all doing? Are we good?
Yeah, it's very, very good. Thanks to be here.
Great to be here.
Fabulous, fabulous. I'm really excited about today. So, like I say, there's lots of changes. We're in the middle of the COVID crisis, but things are changing on a daily basis. So as the experts, obviously I'm hoping we've got some great answers coming our way. And also just to get a bit of idea, I think the real question on everyone's lips is, when can we go on holiday again, right? What is it looking like? So I think firstly, what I'm really interested in is finding out really how comfortable you feel the LGBT plus community are with travel at the moment. And I know I'll start that with Luan, because I know we talked about the survey that you mentioned. So if you wouldn't mind talking a bit more about that, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks so much, Saskia. It's great to be here. I'm Luan Holden. I'm Vice President of Communications for the International LGBTQ plus Travel Association, IGLTA. And we actually recently conducted a survey globally of LGBTQ plus travelers, just to get an idea of what their sentiments were around traveling post-COVID. And we had about 15,000 respondents, and the overarching sentiment was that they would feel comfortable traveling before the end of 2020. That came back at 66%. The other thing that was really interesting was that they also said that they would travel domestically first, which I think lines up with what we're seeing throughout the industry. So they felt a much stronger confidence in traveling domestically than internationally.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what about everybody else? Is this the sort of general consensus? I'm sure it makes sense really when you think about it. Yuan, what about yourself? Have you found that with your travelers, your community?
Yeah, absolutely. But firstly, hi Saskia. Thank you for WorkPride for having me and for hosting this virtual workplace pride, having me as a panelist. By the way, Anu and I have the pleasure of being experientialist in chief, which is a snazzy way of saying editor in chief of Out There magazine, and we're the world's leading luxury and experiential travel magazine for LGBT people. And now, after a decade in print, we're thrilled to be considered one of the nation's foremost travel magazines. Yes, absolutely concur with Loan. I mean, we have our own research. Our world is very much the luxury travel world, and absolutely chomping at the bit. They'd go tomorrow. In fact, some people went last week. When Switzerland opened its borders to the UK, we had a bunch of people travel out to Switzerland. So not only chomping at the bit, they're already there.
Wow, fabulous. And you know what, sorry about that. What I should do is let me just quickly do our introductions as well. So thank you, Ewan and Lana, for those introductions. Giuseppe, can you just give us a quick introduction for yourself and then we can go to...
Oh, yes. Good evening. So, ciao a tutti in Italian. So very, very fantastic to be here. And thank you, Majo, for having me. So I'm account executive for Gay It, the main LGBT plus magazine here in Italy. We work for the travel industry and we very so hard time for all of us because I think Italy is one of the most most wanted destination for LGBTQ travelers. And so we are very talking about how the business will evolve for our market. So I think we are very optimistic and very positive for really lots of destinations here in Italy.
Definitely. Pablo, all the way from Argentina. How are you, my friend? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello, Saskia. I'm really glad to be here and thank you for the invitation. Okay, my name is Pablo De Luca. I live in Buenos Aires in Argentina, down there in South America. I represent the Argentina LGBT Chamber of Commerce, where we've been working in the LGBT travel sector for 15 years now. More than 10 years working together, represented our associates from the private sector. On those projects, we work together with the public sector, especially with the Ministry of Tourism of our country. We began to promote Argentina as an LGBTQ welcoming destination a little bit more than a decade ago. And on the other side, we also work with many small business owners and also with corporations to promote diversity and LGBT inclusion in the workplace here in Argentina and in the region of Latin America. Regarding what you were asking a few minutes ago, I think that the LGBTQ travelers are an important segment in the travel sector and often considered one of the first segments to bounce back after strong reductions in travel due to recessions or health crises. A few days ago, I was reading a CMI study and they quoted the Harris poll that was conducted in early May. And they compare LGBTQ and non-LGBTQ travelers, and the research key findings seem to support and confirm the resilience of our segment of LGBT travelers or the LGBT community.
Right, okay, interesting stuff. And then Darren, sorry, last but very not least, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi Saskia, thanks for having us. My name's Darren, I'm the founder of outofoffice.com and the MD of travelgay.com, which is the world's most visited LGBT travel website. In answer to your question, actually, Travelgay has just released some research this week, which shows that for the first time since the pandemic started, week on week, we are seeing a lot of cities receive a lot more visits to their pages on Travelgay. So, for example, some of the obvious destinations like Mykonos, Sitges, Gran Canaria, beach destinations really are up massively week on week, month on month. and within a week, for example, Torremolinos is up 102%, so they're storming ahead with people wanting to book trips down there. And then in the US, I think it is a case of staycations for the US market. We're seeing big cities, so Orlando and Las Vegas, getting a lot of traffic in terms of people searching their trips.
Okay, great stuff. So, I mean, the thing is as well, with lockdown and the way it's affected, you know, and travel restrictions, the way it has affected everyone globally, and each country seems to have a different setup straight away. And I know there's talk of sort of, you know, the corridors, the travel corridors, etc. But really, the impact on the travel industry, you know, financially, how has that kind of, you know, affected businesses like yourselves? You know, and this isn't, I'm not the tax person, by the way, but, you know, how has it affected? Because naturally, many people won't be booking like they used to, you know. Let me come to you, Earn, about that.
Well, my part of the world, my part of the industry is obviously in publishing. And I know that businesses, destinations, everyone in the travel industry, I'm sure my fellow panelists will concur, has had it really hard. But someone that's a publisher, editor, and business owner, it's been a roller coaster, as you can imagine. I'm an eternal optimist, so I'm happy to say that we've managed to keep our small 100% LGBT plus team in employment, super important to me. And we've also just, you know, we're just trying to keep our head above water at this moment in time while setting up some colorful flares, rainbow flares, to make sure that everyone knows we're still here. But we've always been in the business of luxury inspiration. So our content is always evergreen. So our editorial approach has been really about planting seeds of ideas rather than going into the detail of what, where, and how to travel. So from an editorial perspective, it's business as usual or unusual, curating the stories and news that inspires for whenever we can travel again. And from a publishing perspective, we'll be back in September.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I guess thinking about luxury travel then, let me turn that over to Darren, because also the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is it's not just the effect that will have on the travel industry directly, it's the bars, the hotels, you know, the restaurants in other countries where people are going to. I mean, you know, especially with listings, thinking about how that affects you as a business, but also how are businesses that you're working with surviving or coping? What's happening?
Yeah, we're in a really privileged position with travelgay.com to speak to venue owners all over the world, whether that be bars, clubs, restaurants, saunas, massage venues, you name it, we speak to them. And everyone has been affected. You can't deny that. You know, there are people really struggling out there. There are one-man bands in the Far East who have gone out of business already. There are big venues that were really struggling. You know, even here in London, places like the Royal Tavern were very close to going out of business, and thankfully that's not going to happen. But undoubtedly, the pandemic has had a massive effect on businesses, and I think it's really down to us as a community to come back out and to support them as quickly as we can and as rapidly as we can. You know, we see that when people travel, they look for bars and clubs and things to go to, and if we don't support them now when they need us most, then there won't be bars and there won't be clubs for us to visit when we do decide to finally venture further afield. So definitely support LGBT businesses where you can now. It's really important. Yeah,
that's it really, isn't it? It is very much about, you know, the pink pound as well, keeping that pound strong. Giuseppe, what do you think about that? How will the pink pound survive through this pandemic in terms of the LGBT plus travel industry, do you think?
I think for Italy it's much different a situation, because I think our industry can evolve in a domestic market. For our community, just discover our country, our new Italian destination to buy and to promote at the same time. So I think it's much different the situation. For the incoming market, it's very hard situation, because it will still wait to September to just, you know, to embrace, you know, our travels community from all across the globe, especially from North America and North Europe. But the situation in Italy is much more different, because just to discover, they want to discover Italy for one more time, and just to really to promote, to discover it, you know. And I think that's the situation for, you know, actually for our market here in Italy. But that's it.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to come over to you, Pablo, as well, just to talk about in terms of how it has affected, you know, financially, how it's affected LGBT plus travel. I know that you are usually run your G Network 360 event. It's right, isn't it? And it's a 4-day business event, but as a result of the pandemic, it's been cancelled, meaning businesses are less likely to be able to connect and share and support. How has that been for you?
it was also affected by this crisis, and we have organized G-Network 360, that is a 4-day conference where we talk about LGBT travel in Latin America for the last 13 years. And it was announced, the edition for 2020 for August, as every year in July or August. But with the evolution of the pandemic, we decided to postpone it to November 2020. And we have not begun any kind of promotion yet of the event, just because we thought we should wait to see the impact that local regulations and the evolution of the pandemic would have to allow us to make it a safe event for all the attendees, and of course trying to keep an optimistic view of the pandemic evolution as well. As the peak of the pandemic is late here in comparison with Europe is coming to our city, maybe on the few next weeks, we began to consider that might be possible to even postpone it for 2021 as well. Wow. And if that is the case, we will celebrate a virtual edition, maybe reduce 2 days online events format to reach all the people that we will find it still difficult to travel, because our borders will be open after September.
After September, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, see, this is the thing, isn't it? It really is a case of we just don't really know how it's going to pan out. It's looking positive in many respects, but I think it's just a sit and wait and see what happens, because things are changing on a daily basis, aren't they? So I guess, thinking more positively, thinking about queer resistance and how we are keeping positive, and how we're keeping our readers positive, our customers positive. Loan, tell me a bit more for yourself. Is there anything within your work that you are doing to help support the LGBTQ plus traveling community, keep their spirits up, even if it's a social media tweet here and there connected to your work?
We're actually in a position of a not-for-profit. So our business members are all of the LGBTQ businesses that have been so affected by this pandemic. So our members are tour operators and travel advisors, hoteliers, CVBs. So one of the main things that we've been doing during this time is hosting a series of online members connect calls. And they're actually open to all members of the travel industry. And it's just an online Google Meet weekly call. We post them on our website. We have guest speakers. So we're trying to do two things: continue to provide education to the industry throughout this lockdown time, and also just to provide people with a sense of camaraderie and inspiration as well. And I will say they've evolved a lot. In the beginning, there were a lot of tears on the calls. And now people are really getting back to business and really looking toward recovery and reopening.
Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it? I think it's such a massive shock for everyone, and it is about readjusting, transitioning, and then finding your feet and settling a bit more. Luan, I really liked how on your website, the editor's letter, the message, the positive message you put. First thing I want to quote is your hashtag, keep your mind traveling. It's great. Whilst we can't actually physically go to the destinations we love, that's such a great way to just keep positive and think about that. How have your readers responded? I know you've also got the experiential magazine as well that you've put out as an additional launch. So how's that been for your readers?
I mean, it's been great. I mean, I think traffic in general for publishers has been up because everyone's at home, but it's been really great. We launched the Experientialist and hashtag keep your mind traveling. Please use that while we continue to still be in grounded. We launched that back in the first week of March, which was on the day the UK lockdown was implemented. I mean, I'm old, so I worked in travel for a very long time. And I worked in travel when 9/11 hit, and I worked in travel and I was looking after a completely portfolio of Thai hotels when the tsunami hit. So I saw a lot of this coming. So while the industry was in shock, and we were really populating a whole new part of our website, and we immediately moved all our resources into digital, effectively skipping our summer print issue. And I'm thrilled to say that alongside the green shoots of recovery that's happening in the travel industry, we're going back to print in September. But what we did was to launch a platform called the Experientialist on outthere.travel, which is a media positive campaign, which you'll see as soon as you launch the site. It's a pop-up compendium of feel-good stories. They're designed to be interactive and sensorial to continue to feed people wanderlust. But a really important thing for me was to aid positive mental health. I think that's really important at this time, because there are some discussions around mental health at this time, but because of COVID, the discussion around well-being tends to be around physical health. So what the experientialists and what I wanted from the experientialists was to showcase the very best of what the industry is doing at this time. Fun things, as well as gorgeous photography, travel porn, essentially, but with no agenda, not asking anyone to do anything, not asking anyone to book anything. We want this platform to be a go-to for hope and continue to demonstrate how to live a transformative lifestyle, but also to help our audiences be experiential as possible in their own homes. And it's worked really well.
Yeah, great stuff. Travel porn, that's a whole new panel, isn't it? Jeez. Giuseppe, you're also in media as well. What about yourself? The response from the community, this goes out to all of you, you know, coming back, it's great that you are publicly putting out that support, but what's been the feedback, Giuseppe, for yourself?
Yes, I think the feedback is very, very positive, because we have a section of travel. We just put all the comments of our travels community inside that. But the response is very, very just with people to bring back to travel in Italy, but in Europe, and especially North and South America. So I think the response is just really, really, really positive, because we work is so lots of really gay-friendly hotels by a gay couple build a gay-friendly hotel for the market. So just very big positive message for our country, but especially for all the countries or classic Group. That's the bring the positive message to bring back the LGBT really travels industry on the road one more time. So I think that's really the big positive message. That's the reason why we were still working on the domestic market, and absolutely we just keep really saying the incoming and the outgoing market is just really important. But that's for it. It's just to improve our market, to just sell Italy as a gay-friendly destination.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Darren, I suppose you know, it's luxury travel from your end as well, but all types of travel for all people who want to go on holiday. I mean, you've got such a different market within both your companies, haven't you? How does that work? Have you seen a difference in terms of how you communicate now with your customers?
I think for us, it became really personal on the out-of-office luxury side of the business. You know, we had to cancel 185 honeymoons, for example, and that suddenly is really personal for people. It's a horrible thing to have to do. And our team have really good personal connections with the clients that they're booking. And so they've kind of built that honeymoon from the ground up, so they know it inside out. So it feels personal. And I think that's helped in us being able to move those trips. Most of them have been moved to next year. Some have sadly been cancelled for now. But that's helped massively, and I think that's the clients have seen positivity in the way that we've handled those situations, because it is so personal. You know, no one would want a honeymoon to be cancelled, but that's obviously a horrible thing to happen. On the travel gay side of the business, I think it's a bit more online booking. It's a bit more people booking a hotel rather than a luxury trip. As I said, we've started to see bookings pick up, mainly from American customers staying within America, but also going down to Mexico as well. And I think, yeah, the way we communicate with our people is it's LGBT to LGBT, and I think that really helps. A bit like you and, you know, that experientialist travel ideas that we can build as a community. People buy from people at the end of the day, and people buy from people who they trust. And LGBT people, it's been shown, trust LGBT people's opinions and research more. So that definitely helps. And I think a lot of travel brands out there, mass market travel brands, have for a long time been quite patronizing to the LGBT community. And that's not standing them in good stead. You know, you Google LGBT holidays or gay holidays, you'll often get a token page on a mainstream tour operators page. And guess what? That page hasn't changed for the last 3 years. It's got the same destinations on it that are all predictable, and people don't find it authentic. And I think authenticity is another thing that's been really brought to the forefront of this during this pandemic. People will remember the brands that looked after them during this time, and they'll remember the ones that didn't. And it's been really crucial when you've got that personal one-to-one relationship with people, especially when it's their honeymoon, to make sure you look after them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, let's say you hope it's the first and last time you ever book in a honeymoon, right? Again, another thing. But, you know, it's basically how, you know, these are real key important moments and times in people's lives, and having that respect, I think, is the key word really from the, you know, from the organisation, company that you're working with, you know, to really have that sort of understanding of how important that is to you. makes a massive difference. Like you say, if you're well looked after, you're going to go back to the customers. The customers will come back to you. Pablo, over in Argentina, how are you finding things? Because I know when we spoke yesterday, you mentioned that things were just kind of starting to change and turn now. So it's just finding your feet with the pandemic and how it's affecting everybody.
Well, as I told you before, maybe we are suffering like we are in the peak of the crisis. So now 70% of our hotels are considering to even close their businesses, and we have always 5,600 travel agents with £0 in sales for more than 3 months. So this is important. This is a difficult situation, but at the same time, we also made a strong work on keeping alive the strong desire to get back to normality, to travel again. With ads campaigns through social and digital media, and being helped by most of the influencers and media representatives that have already visited in the past our country, our destinations. And considering that people is at their screens 40% more than usual, and they help us to tell LGBT travelers in different countries all the things they had lived in Argentina and what they will be able to do when COVID finally will be not a problem anymore. We call this campaign Travelers' Dreams, and we invited people who had already been, and also those who dream of visiting us, to share with us their dreams that were shown on several platforms, making them virtual as a way to keep our minds traveling, as Ewan said, until we can do it for real soon again, I hope.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So do you think, the big thing with our community is very much always about inclusion, and respect, and making sure, especially for any organisation that we're working with, which is why I love the fact that, my G work is LGBT inclusive business community, working with inclusive organisations, but that is really important in our everyday life. So have you noticed that, for people who are maybe, we've got LGBT plus travel industry, right? Does that mean that for those outside travel organisations, they're still not up there with their, with their inclusion, with their language, and how they're working with LGBT plus customers? I mean, do you think there's been a shift in the industry as an overall? Darren?
Definitely. I mean, it is improving. I mentioned in my last answer about some mainstream travel companies that are doing things tokenistically, but there are other mainstream travel companies that are doing it very authentically. You look at things like Celebrity Cruises, who do it really, really well. And then from a tourist board point of view, there are some great examples. Malta, Stockholm do it really well. Canada does it really well. And for somewhere like Malta, which was historically a very non-liberal country and has in the last few years become very liberal, they've done things such as remove gender from passports, which we still haven't done in the UK yet. Little things like that show that it is changing, and it is still going to take quite a long time, but I hope it's going in the right direction at least.
Definitely. Loan, what about yourself in terms of, again, for your readers? I don't know, does it work like this? Are there complaints, or do you get people writing to you saying, gosh, this is happening, are things going to change? From your perspective, what does that look like?
Well, actually, I think considering that we have such a diverse cross-section of members, both LGBTQ plus owned and allies, in 80 plus countries, we get surprisingly few complaints about our members, because I think that just when they decide to show up to the table, there is a commitment there, and they do have a desire to learn and to genuinely support the community. One of the things that we asked in our survey that was interesting was, will you change your destination choices post-COVID? And about half of the respondents said no, they wouldn't change their destination choices. And about a quarter were still undecided. So what I think you can actually interpret from that is that there's a great degree of destination loyalty within our community, even amidst all this uncertainty. And so I think there's really a chance for destinations sending strong messages of inclusivity to really resonate with LGBTQ plus travelers now as we move through this pandemic.
And we are a resilient community. We've gone through many pandemics. We've got, HIV and AIDS pandemic. Or even if it's anti-gay laws or LGBT plus laws, we always find a way to come together and stand up don't we, against discrimination, however, in whichever way we can. And I think that's really important, and that visibility is really important. So I guess to maybe the publicists as well, and the writers in the panel, again, how, even though you've put out positive messages, how have you found your, you know, your readers? You told me some lovely stories about, you know, some of your readers are still making sure they help their neighbours, that they're still, it's not just about being insular within the LGBTQ community, helping everyone who needs it. You know, what's been the experience there?
Definitely community is big. Community is the word, I mean, the buzzword of now. People hanging together, keeping together in whatever community they are. And it's been really nice to see particularly the LGBT community banding together. But, you know, we also owe it to ourselves and a responsibility to help other communities. We won't be immune to what's happening with Black Lives Matter, for example, right now. And, you know, that's what I urge. Intersectionality is really, really important. Diversity and inclusion is a moving feat. It's not something that is black and white. People always think, oh, we did something, so we're diverse now. That's not true. There's always so much to learn. There's always something to change. You know, standing by the trans community, standing by people with different abilities or vulnerabilities. That's, you know, really, really important in terms of community. And I'm encouraged to see that people are pulling together. And I think that's what people want from our survey, slightly different to Loanne's. We've seen a really marked increase in people who want to go on transformative holidays. Holidays that's about community, holidays that's about caretaking, holidays that are is better for the planet and better for humanity in general. And I think that's a really interesting move. I'm sure the travel industry would love to go back almost immediately to the way things were before COVID, because that's happy times. But I think we all owe it to our readers, owe it to our customers to look at ways of doing better within the travel industry. Absolutely.
Great stuff, Darren. So on that note then, I mean, do you feel like there will be many changes when we come, you know, when things resume? I don't think we can ever say things will resume as normal. Don't ever like the word normal anyway. So, you know, when things do kind of get back to what they used to be a bit like, how would that be for your company, do you think? Many changes coming your way?
I think quite a lot of changes in the short term. I think in the long term, things will end up feeling quite normal. But in the short term, obviously, planes aren't going to be full. The Maldives reopens in a few weeks. You're only allowed to stay at one island rather than going to two, God forbid. But you know, there are lots of different micro laws coming into place in so many different places. It's actually quite hard to stay on top of all the different changes. We've got 70% of our client base in the USA. Obviously, we're monitoring the laws there and the CDC's advice there really closely because that impacts on us. I think there will be noticeable changes. I mean, you only have to look at what's happening in your local areas right now with social distancing to realize that that's here to stay for quite a while. It's not going anywhere. I do worry what's going to happen to a lot of gay bars and gay clubs if they can't get back to full capacity quite soon. It is quite concerning that there will be businesses that can't survive and can't see it through. Again, that's why I say we need to support businesses where we can. And I do expect that we'll also see prices increasing rather than decreasing, and not because people are desperate, and that's not because companies aren't desperate to get people back, but just financially they will have to increase prices to stay afloat. So I think that's what we'll see across the industry in terms of pricing, at least.
Yeah, I guess that's, well, it's always who gets hit the hardest, right? You know, it's someone's pocket is always someone's gonna have to dig that bit deeper, aren't they, in their pocket to survive. But you are right, and same with you, and the important thing about all of this, especially within our community, we know it so well, is all about allyship, and the importance of allyship. And I think, you know, like you say, rightly so, thank you for mentioning, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, and also the trans community as well. And I would like to just touch on with the trans community. You know, again, I feel like within our community, you know, there's no hierarchy of discrimination, but tends to be the trans community and the Black trans community in particular that are always marginalised and experience higher inequalities. How would you say, I mean, what is the trans community like in terms of customers, you know, for us, I suppose I should come to you, Darren, for travel services? I mean, is there a big community of trans people? Do they use travel services for the safety aspect as well? What does that look like?
I wish there were, but we don't see many trans inquiries come into our business. And when we do, obviously, it's a case-by-case basis. With every client that we work with, it's very personal, as I said. But in terms of out of office, it doesn't receive a lot of inquiries from trans customers. And I still haven't got to the bottom of why that is. It is obviously more difficult to travel as a trans person, whether that be immigration, whether that be at checking in at a hotel, than it is for potentially a lesbian or gay or bisexual couple. And I think, you know, there will be a lot of strides, hopefully, in the near future to improve trans inclusion rights across the globe. We are seeing that happen in different countries. As I said, Malta removing gender, not making it an issue. There being a lot more trans pride movements, which is great. And I do think things will change. I think the challenge as well is that there's not that much content out there right now for the trans community. We certainly could do better as a business from that side of things. I know a lot of other businesses could do better, but I think as a trans traveller, there are extra hurdles and barriers, and I wish that there were really easy ways to jump over them, and I hope that will improve over the coming years.
So Pablo, coming back to you about, you know, we talked recently about, you know, the trans community and some real positive changes that you were telling me about with the government, with the COVID, and how they were supporting now trans community. Can you just tell us a bit more about that, please?
Sure. As I was telling you, Argentina has been a long time supporter to trans and gender non-conforming community. And since 2012, here we passed one of the most progressive identity gender laws in the region. And this administration is now working in most of the states on transgender quota in the workplace, supported by law, in a way to accelerate the real trans inclusion. But during the pandemic, inequality was shown first on these vulnerable groups. And we saw first several organizations like NGOs and LGBT organizations such as Argentina Homosexual Community or 100% Diversity and many more, organizing assistance programs for those vulnerable and many times marginalized groups among our LGBT community. These organizations have also worked hard to make members of transgender community to be included on the social programs, official social programs created for those affected by pandemic, to give the economic support to help them go through these times with less impact on their lives.
So important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I guess as well, Darren, when you hit the nail on the head when you talked about content, so coming back to our, you know, publicists, our editors, our writers of the groups, social media people, why does it tend to be less sort of awareness or less support about, you know, I don't know, the trans community in terms of what we're seeing in our newspapers, our magazines, you know, how we're advertising and promoting? Let me ask, I will come to Loan about that.
Well,
give me a frown look. I'm sorry about that question. And I know it's open-ended, but it's just I don't want, you know, tell me your thoughts.
No, I mean, it's because it's such a complicated thing, but what I think is that we've had a couple of transgender-owned travel agencies within IGLTA, and even before the pandemic, you know, one of them went out of business. So I think, you know, in terms of visibility and sustainability, they are having challenges, you know, within their own communities and even getting the messages out there about what they're doing. But I also think, and this has really been brought to light with Black Lives Matter, is that we have a tendency to gravitate toward what we see around us and what we understand. And if we don't know transgender people, it's very easy to just gloss over them within the LGBTQ plus community and act like, oh, well, we said the T in there, so therefore we've acknowledged them. And so it's something that we all need to be better at. And it really comes from education.
Absolutely. See, that was a great answer there, you see. Take the daggers back, Loan. Giuseppe, what about yourself? How do you think we could be more, you know, responsive and supportive in terms of social media and promotion for the LGBT, well, the trans and gender non-conforming community within the travel industry?
Yeah, I think the social media is just really important instrument to just involve, you know, really our industry, our market. As long as I think because it's just to live, because just the situation, the travel market, just to give the opportunity to leave the destination as an insider, no? And the social media that use this instrument as just leave the destination, the place in a more inclusive, more diversity, and especially more that insider. That's it, just really important to just use really different instruments, and especially the social media for promoting a destination as not only gay friendly, I think, destination, but I think as an inclusive destination. And just leave the experience as an insider. I think that's really, really important to give to outside, you know? The idea of our market, the best ideas of just invest in us, so invest in our market, be inclusive, be positive. Because I think, especially in Italy, I think that my experience, when the people think about LGBT plus community, thinks about the pride or the access or some different things, they really don't know really so well the business of our market. And I think so the social media and the customer service with the hotel industry, with different companies, tour operators, and the help of social media, you know, just support our market, just leave, okay, so it's time to invest in us, it's time to just know how it's involved in your destination, our community. I think the goal is just community. And I think that the coronavirus, I think, will help not only my country, but all across the globe, and especially our market, to just improve and just to know what the people wants to know about our industry. I think that's the positive way about that.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, Yuan, what about yourself? I mean, as a, you've got that out there, you've got your online experientialist publication out as well. So I don't, forgive me, I'm not saying you don't write enough about the trans and gender non-conforming community. I don't know. Tell me about that, how it is with your magazine. Is there more that can be done, or?
Absolutely. Like I say, inclusivity is not black and white. Sorry, wrong choice of words. Inclusivity is not simple, cut and dry, let's say. It really is a challenging one, and it's something we have always strived to do. We always try to get more voices of color. It is difficult, even with voices of color, because there's just not as many writers of color. And it's the same with trans. There's not as many trans travel writers out there. We've had a couple of journalists who were trans write for us. And interestingly, the stories didn't come back as a trans story. Obviously, because from a gender identity perspective, they don't necessarily consider themselves trans. They might consider themselves male or female or other or none. And the stories have been very much about the journey that they took, rather than the complications or the challenges of traveling while trans. But maybe that's because of the tone of voice of the magazine. I would hope that we could try to address that issue more. And absolutely, there's so much more we can do. Absolutely, so much more we can do. And I have to work harder to make sure that we are more inclusive from a trans perspective, but also from the perspective of people of color and intersectionality as well.
Can I just pick up on what Ewan said? Can I just pick up on what Ewan said there? Because it's a really interesting point, which is, don't forget, when we write things, they don't have to be gay, or lesbian, or trans. They can just be really interesting articles about a destination or a place that don't even make reference to your sexual orientation, but people buy from it, they like it because it's written by someone who is like-minded and looking at the world with the same lens that they are. And I think we often lose sight of that as content writers and businesses. We think we've got to, put the gay at the very center of the article. You don't. You just need to make sure it's written in a really authentic way.
I have one more thing to add, actually. Sorry. Not from my mom out there's perspective, but I have the benefit of being the LGBT plus travel ambassador for the Kingdom of Thailand. And Thailand has always been very open and accepting of the trans community, particularly in its global outreach. We have a campaign online at the moment called Go Thai Be Free that you can just see at www.gothaiBeFree.com, which is Thailand's LGBT inspirational platform. And we have been very specific in trying to get as many trans writers on there as possible, but also trans representation. And I think you talked about representation early on in marketing. Trans representation is slightly more challenging because trans is a gender issue, as we know, and LGB is a sexuality issue. So they all get lumped together, but you have to split it. And it's challenging because there's no one representation of a trans person. And there's no one representation of a non-gender, non-conformist person. So it's very hard to put that person in the spotlight, I think, in marketing. But I think as long as you take the right steps and you're seen to try, like what Darren says, in a non-tokenistic way, to see that you're moving the conversation forward, that's a positive conversation. I think the challenges are for brands that they sit there and think, oh, I'm going to do the wrong thing if I do it. And they need to bring more people in, more diverse people. They need to have trans people on their marketing boards. They need to have trans people on their advisory groups to be able to move this conversation forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking all of your points and totally agreeing, you know, on one hand, it is about having more visibility and inclusivity. But on the other hand, as queers, I'm sure that you'll all agree, we don't always, you know, it's about gender identity or sexual orientation. That isn't what we're about. That isn't the only part that makes us up in life in the community. So, you know, I think maybe about, you know, building those bridges, more communication, building confidence within the trans community to maybe write those articles and talk more about the travel, but then it comes from the fact that it's their experience, but not as over there, you know, not about their gender. So yeah, totally agree on all points. You know how quickly these things go, and we are on 3:28. So the lovely question that I know half of you were desperate not to answer. I don't know why, because you're all in the travel industry. So I want to leave you with a question. Please do tell me, as travel experts, I'm very jealous, you get to go to many places. Please do let me know, what would be your, I don't know, top LGBT inclusive holiday destination? I know there's many beautiful places in the world, but if we're selling it on the LGBT plus, you know, travel panel, where would you most like to go, or where would you most like to promote? So Giuseppe, tell me.
But first of all, Italy, of course, you know, it's my country, and of course. But, you know, Pablo, you know that I think for me is Argentina, because I think Argentina is just more inclusive and more LGBT. It's just for everyone. I think Argentina, Buenos Aires, I think is the top list, you know that.
Fabulous. Okay, Pablo, don't you shout out Argentina as well. Come on, I want to know you somewhere.
Don't cry for me, Pablo, please.
No, thank you, Giuseppe. Well, I have been lucky to travel to many countries as I was working promoting my country during the last decade, and this is difficult to choose just one, but I would say at least that I love Madrid and Berlin, Tel Aviv and London, Rio de Janeiro, Toronto, and of course, Buenos Aires and Argentina.
Shameless publications. Darren, tell us yourself. We've got to wrap it up in about 1 minute between three. So come on, Darren.
Yeah, well, I'll keep it brief. I love, or haven't been, but I want to go to French Polynesia, because to me, it's like the Maldives, but it's LGBT friendly. They allow same-sex marriage. They're welcoming of trans people there. I'm desperate to go. It's a very long way to go. So maybe in a few years' time, but I'm desperate to go there. Maybe honeymoon.
Putting that on the list, right? Ewan, tell us about yourself. Where would you like to go? What would be the top spot?
For absolute transparency, I work for both, but Thailand and Stockholm, definitely. I'll slip that in there. But for inclusive, like Argentina, that's a fantastic job. I was due to be there with Pablo at G Network. Unfortunately, we can't do that, and I hope we can make it in November. But if not, I'm definitely coming back. It will be my 7th or 8th visit, Pablo. You can tell me more than I can tell. My 7th or 8th visit.
You are
the fact that I keep going back, you know, goes to show that I love it.
Well, listen, this time around, I'm coming back with you. So, you know, make sure you leave me a space. Luan, just to end on that, where would be your favourite LGBT plus destination?
Yeah, so as a member business-based association, I can really get into trouble here. I've got Italy, Argentina, Sweden, and Thailand, all that I love, and I want to give a big shout out to.
You can tell she's in PR.
I know, but I will pivot a little bit and say also for, you know, as a lesbian who loves the beautiful outdoors and safety is really important, Iceland is actually a real favorite of mine. It blew me away.
Well, I am a big fan of Thailand. Been there many times as a backpacker in my youth, but also as a holiday maker. And as I say, I'm due to be coming on holiday with all of you at some point as soon as the lockdown restrictions end. I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined in. If you want to hear more or connect with any of our panelists today, you can go on to mygwork.com to connect with them and see what they're getting up to when they're on holiday, more importantly. I've also been Saskia. I'm not just a panel host, I am also an LGBT plus inclusion consultant, if I can say that right. It's good business, isn't it? So yes, thank you to everyone, and I just want to wish everybody a happy Pride and keep safe. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you.
everyone.
Happy Pride
Thank you.
to all of you.
Happy Pride.
Yeah.
I'll just do a little photo actually. Let's do the photo. Ready? The screenshot. You ready? 3, 2, 1. And actually, the best word to say for the best photo, people, is lesbian. Lauren, I know you're with me on that, girl. Ready? Lesbian.
Lesbian.
Happy Pride, everybody. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.